I made a terrible mistake. You must get out now! Get out now!
It is terrifying, and it is a story of a woman and her family living in a home with a horrific story, and it is all supposedly true. This new movie, The Haunting in Connecticut, is based on the story of Carmen Reed and her family. They moved into this new home in order to be close to a hospital, and that new home was a funeral home with a past life. And the things that happened there in 1986 are the subject of one of the biggest films in the country right now. I want to bring in Carmen Reed. She's going to join us now live to talk about the movie and what it was like living in this home. Really nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you too.
When we were just watching that clip, you said to me off camera, that didn't happen to her, that my niece, that happened to me.
Right.
What exactly happened in that house?
Oh, there were so many things. It would take me 2 years to explain it all to you, but there were so many things that happened. We had banging. We had mattresses breathe. We had, whenever I put mop water to the floor, it would turn this thick, red, putrid, smelly stuff. We finally had to rip that linoleum up. I contacted the manufacturer and they said it could not happen, but it was happening.
Okay, so all of these things were happening, and of course you're exploring this new home that you're renting in 1986 because your son was getting care for cancer and you wanted to be closer to that medical facility. And you've learned that the home was
a funeral home. It
Okay.
had been a funeral home. It was built to be a funeral home. The director lived above it. He raised his son there, and he sold it when he got in his 90s, and we were the first people that moved in after. It had been a funeral home.
Okay, there are people that would understandably be skeptical as you're saying these things, and this is portrayed as being a true story, but this truly happened to you.
It truly did, and I was the biggest skeptic of all. My son was telling me from the day we moved in that the house was evil, and that he was hearing voices, and that there was this man that he could describe very well in great detail in the basement, but I couldn't see him and I couldn't hear them, so I didn't believe him.
And when did you start believing then?
Well, one night my niece came to me. She come in from a date and she said, "Aunt Carmen, it's happening again." And I went into her room with her, and I actually witnessed a hand go up under her shirt. I could see the knuckles, the fingernails, and the wrist bone under her nightshirt. At that point I scooped her up, ran in the dining room and called the church.
Okay, if all this was going on, you say you stayed in the home a couple of years? Why?
Well, this is at the end. When I got involved, I mean, the kids were the only ones being tormented in the beginning, and I was unaware of it. It would hide from me because they'd say, "Okay, there's a little boy skipping through this room," and I'd go in there and there would be nobody there.
You said it would hide from me.
It, whatever it was, whatever you want to call it, an entity, a spirit, it's been called so many things, and I truly don't have an understanding to give you an answer to what it was.
Okay, but this is something that you've obviously thought about day after day over the years, and I've read that you tried to push this story away, but it just wouldn't allow you to close the book.
No. There were so many people, I guess because of my son's illness, and it was a funeral home, and the things that happened, and that happened over a 2-year period. I could tell you a story every day and tell you something new that you wouldn't recognize, that you'd heard brand new.
So there is a book, there is also a documentary, and now there's this film on the big screen. What type of a role did you play with the creation of this film?
In this film, I started with Andrew Trapani in 2002, and I worked with the writers, Tim Metcalf and Adam Simon, for a long time before it was ever made with the writing of the script. I mean, we went over every detail that happened. He saw the drawings, they saw the poetry that was written. My son kept writing this one poem over and over and over again that gave us credence to what was going on in the house. And then we talked about what the researchers found and all of that stuff. So they know me better than my mother.
So you're now working with those researchers and writing your own book on some of the items that have been left out of this film. It's only 90 minutes.
Right. I actually am writing the book myself. The researcher, John Zaffis, is helping me with some of the details, and he's got tapes and things of that nature, and we're co-writing it with each other.
Why is it so important that this story be told?
It's important to me because I put my son in a mental hospital because I didn't believe in this stuff. I don't ever want to see another 13-year-old boy put in a straitjacket for telling the truth.
How is your son today?
He's 35, doing very well. He has 4 sons of his own.
But you're very protective over your family.
I am very protective. They want to live normal lives, and I want them to have a normal life. I don't get to have one, but I want them to.
So what are you doing so that they're allowed to have a normal life as you share this story about their life?
I'm using my name, Reed, my maiden name, my birth name, and it protects them to a greater degree. They couldn't function in their jobs daily if people were constantly asking them questions.
And what are the big questions that you are asked when people see the documentary, read the book, see this film? What are the questions you're asked over and over?
One of the biggest questions I'm asked over and over is how my son is, and you just asked that one. And then a lot of people ask me how close the documentary is to the truth, and it's very close. I mean, for time constraints, there's 8 hours on the cutting room floor of the documentary that they couldn't put in, and that was still a condensed version. And the movie, I have over 1,200 documents that I could print that would tell you the story, but they couldn't put all of that in a 90-minute movie, and it would be too long to watch a movie that contained it all. So this book is going to be a tell-all.
Well, I was reading your online bio. You had details of your childhood, and you say, I was always an intuitive child. You also had an imaginary friend, and you wrote, I could always see into someone's spirit and know whether they were good or evil.
Right.
Is that one of the reasons why you can almost, if even rationalize why this has happened to you?
Yes, that's what I do. And my children are the same. I mean, my youngest son, he walks his dog through a cemetery which is near his apartment, and he said that there's an old man that goes with him routinely. And I told him it was because of the dog and him. He's just lonely and he wants to keep them company on their walk.
Understandably, people would be skeptical of the story. Some people would be terrified of the story, fascinated by your story as well. What do you want people to take away when they read your book, when they see this film, when they watch the documentary or the other book that's out on your story?
The biggest thing I want people to do is not to play with the occult. There are so many young people now that are delving into the dark arts and witchcraft. You don't want to control somebody else, even though it may seem like a good idea at the time. You really never have control, and you're just inviting harm on yourself. I don't want kids to play with the occult at all.
So you're telling kids not to play. What do you do to live a safe life for yourself and your loved ones day after day?
I live in faith, and I walk in faith.
If you want to learn more about her story, again, you're writing the book. When will that be out?
I'm not sure.
It
should be out. Work in progress.
Okay, but if you would like to see Carmen Reed's story and her story that her family endured back in 1986, again, the film now before audiences in The Haunting in Connecticut. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
Go see the
Appreciate
film.
it.
It's great.
I'm so scared.